Welcome to Excitant Fiber's Q&A session. In this session, Excitant Fiber's management team addresses frequently asked questions from investors and potential investors. They explore how Excitant Fiber competes against satellite providers like Starlink, the benefits of our vertically integrated approach, and the scalability of our operations in rural markets. The team also dives into the strategy behind our SPV leasing model, the customer acquisition process, and our exit plans for long-term growth.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Exciting Fiber management team here. We've had a few questions from some of our potential investors on that they wanted to answer, and so we want to take the time to record this, as there may be other answers, there's maybe other questions and questions that you may have as well to make a decision to invest in Exciting Fiber. We've got Hal Broomfield, Cody Landrum, and John Dennis of Wood Rock Capital is here with us. Hal and Cody, myself, and John will help answer the questions. But one of the first questions we had here, and I'm just going to read it verbatim so we can get the depth of it here. What about the risk of fiber optic networks gaining market share against products like Starlink that are already on the market? While this is more expensive, it's already available in rural communities and could theoretically take the place of fiber optic network that is capital intensive to start. Cody and Hal, we've had these questions a lot. And so Cody, what is your response to that? And then from there, we can have dialogue with Hal and others in this.
Starlink is a huge leap forward in satellite technology. It has changed the game for a lot of people in rural America. And by rural America, I mean super rural America, farms, ranches, places that have no connectivity whatsoever. And while it is a massive step forward, it is not fiber. Fiber feeds the ground stations, that feeds the satellite repeaters that go up to the satellites. It is basically twice as much as the cost of what a fiber circuit is. And fiber still can offer 10, 20, 30 times the speed. For example, I have Starlink as a backup connection at my beach house. And usually the best speed tests I get are about 100 to 150 megabits. Whereas what we're going to offer starts out at 2,500 megabits each way. Now that's a download comparison. The upload comparison is I only get about 10 megabits on my upload, which if I had nothing else to offer, that would be fantastic. But again, we would offer 2,500 megabits upload. So I don't even know the multiple there, 250 times the speed increase for half the price.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And Hal, I know Cody spoke to it in the past. What type of issues do you have if a lot of people start utilizing Starlink in a specific area, unlike with fiber?
So with any wireless technology, you're limited to the spectrum available for those people. An example I often use is what happens whenever you go to an event where there's a mass group of people, like a sports event, a concert, and you try to use your cell phone. It's dead in the water. And that's just due to congestion, because there's only so much frequency that can be used for Starlink, satellite communication, or 5G. And I'll second what Cody said is Starlink, it's a great option for those that really have no options. The satellite service is better than HughesLink, but it pales in comparison to what fiber is able to provide.
I have one other thing, Justin. I know that a very important use of the Starlink is on RVs and boats. It is incredibly cost effective and a much better than any of the other alternatives, Hughes or any of the other stuff, or KVH, which is the sort of gold standard for ships, but it's $5,000 a month after a $60,000 piece of equipment. So it has a great place in the market, but not really for a fixed position land-based opportunity.
Right. And I'm gonna beat the dead horse, Cody, because I know you've got a good analogy used as far as a light shining down on it. I wanted you to speak to that. I think it'd be good for people that don't understand it as well. I mean, I've already covered it, but how that, usage is used and how that works. I know you've done it in the past. If you call what I'm
Sure.
saying.
The way the satellites work is it's like a maglite flashlight. You can twist the beam on the maglite, make it tighter, make it wider. What they've done is taken that spot beam and they shine those down up on each little area that they go to, and each one of those is a different area with the same amount of speed available. The problem is they're pretty big areas given how many people live in them,
Mm-hmm.
and the more people that sign up, the slower the speeds get. Again, back
Right.
to what Hal said, there's only so much air is what I call it. There's only so much spectrum, as he said, in that particular frequency range that the government has said you can do this. We don't have that problem.
Right.
We have light that goes to every house. We have there's no governing body that says you can only have this much speed total, and then you have to divvy that up. Again, if you have nothing else, so you're out in the middle of nowhere, you get full speed. You might see 200 megabits. You might see 300. But in Crystal Beach, when the internet goes out, you can tell a difference between when the internet's on, when the internet's off, and I mean the local incumbent. You can tell a
Mm-hmm.
difference because how many people have rolled over to something else or are on that. Same thing with the cell network, as he talked about. It happened. It doesn't have to be at a sporting event. On a holiday weekend at Crystal Beach, same thing happened. You can't even get a text message out. It's so bad, and I'm not exaggerating. Your phone, if you have
Right.
an Apple phone, it turns green because iMessage will not even connect. That is how
Right.
clogged it gets, and that same feasibility could happen. And the last thing I'll say is Elon Musk has been quoted saying, "If you have another option, don't buy this.
Yep.
This is not for
Right.
you.
Right.
This is for because you will literally bring down the people who do need it by way of you just deciding to use this." And so that says it all.
Right. One of the things that people have asked me before we haven't brought up here, and I'll say this last thing. What if, I know there's more satellites to put in the air. More satellites isn't going to solve these problems that Starlink has. And they have issues with keeping satellites in there. They're always having satellites that are going to fall out of orbit as well at every launch. Is that any concern for us going forward that they'll put more satellites in the air and that the speed will get faster and more reliable and the above?
No, I mean, you think about the density. Each one of these satellites are hundreds or thousands of miles apart. And each satellite services a certain geographical area. You're not going to end up with multiple satellites servicing a single geographic area. So putting more satellites up is just going to give Starlink more geographic coverage, but not overlapping coverage, thereby giving more speed or reliability.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you for that. The next question was, and John, this is going to be kind of directed to me and you or you. And I think there was a model difference here, but we still want to discuss it. Our assumption is that they will use the $10 million to purchase equipment and fiber to reach the first region. Once it's installed, they would theoretically earn revenue from monthly subscription fees. What's the point of SPV leasing model for the equipment?
Sorry.
What's the point of the SPV leasing model for the equipment? And I can talk to that as you're getting caught up on it. I mean,
yeah, I'm assuming that they're talking about the drilling equipment. That was where I was a little
correct. Yeah.
Okay.
So we'd set up. So what that was is that we set up the special purpose vehicle for the drills, and the majority of that was, part of it is for the liability that we have a separate company for the drilling, and that we can also have control of the drilling. With Hal's experience, they outsourced the majority of the drilling. With Cody's experience, he actually bought the drills, had drilling crews, and was able to not only cut his costs from $10 to $12 per foot, if I'm saying that correctly, but also truthfully can have better control of it and of his day to day. And so, Cody, Al, y'all speak to this. I mean, I think I've covered the high points here. I don't want to ramble on here and take y'all's time.
Yeah, mine's very simple, and then I'll let Hal go to it. We were 1/3 cheaper. At the time, the market rate was $12 to $15 per foot, and we came in at $4 to $4.50 a foot. So we were a quarter to a third, somewhere in there, cheaper. It just depended on the day you looked at what the value of things were. But by having your own people and your own equipment, you basically do the exact same thing your contractor is going to do. You just don't pay the premium. Because if you get a 4-man crew from a contractor and a drill, he's got a note on the drill and he's got to pay those people whatever that may be, $20 an hour, whatever it is. You're getting charged $30 to $40 an hour plus an extra cost on the drill. We just took that out and we drilled ourselves. So, but that is just the simplicity on the doing it yourself model versus contractor.
I would argue, I would describe it, Justin, from a slightly different perspective. Being vertically integrated, owning your own drill crews and owning your own drills is a cheaper model, greater control, greater reliability, and cheaper per foot. Yeah. I think we all agree with that from the two operators, Cody and Hal. There's also a benefit at the startup stage that you're raising operating capital for the business separate from equipment financing. And equipment financing generally is easier to put together because it's secured by a piece of equipment. And there's a depreciation opportunity with the piece of equipment. So the SPV model separates out the cost of the equipment. And if you make the assumption that owning your own drilling equipment and owning your own drilling guys running it is the better model from a cost and control perspective, which we believe, and Cody and Hal have explained, then the question is, how do you finance it? Do you finance it with equity working capital, what I would call operating capital for the business? Or since there is equipment financing available, or there are folks that like the idea of financing a piece of equipment, then you put the piece of equipment in an SPV. The SPV effectively charges a fee to the OpCo, but a fee that's close to the concept of what it would be like if it was on balance sheet. And you just now have created a special purpose vehicle where the equity investor gets a depreciation advantage in their financing and a return that still works advantageously to the OpCo. So I think that was the real logic from a financing perspective. But I think the operating advantage of operating and owning and controlling your own piece of equipment, whether it's on the balance sheet of Excitant or whether it's in an SPV that's effectively controlled by Excitant, that's just an alternative financing structure. And that was why we created the SPV. I don't believe an SPV makes logical sense once the cost of capital to OpCo based on its own cash flows is substantially less than what standalone equipment financing runs, which is often 400, 500, 600 basis points over prime, for example.
Right. And we've said it here. I'm gonna go ahead and say it. We've said it, but we haven't said it. The other thing that this offers us for having our own drills and our own drilling crews is tremendous flexibility in a startup stage to seek other opportunities and to do things that you may not be able to do with just standard contractors. Okay. And in the startup stages, to me, as you know, one of my main businesses is having control of the aircraft. For us, is huge. And so it's the same concept here on this side of it, as well as it gives you tremendous flexibility to be able to, control your world. And so,
hugely advantageous at an early stage. The only way you would run your business when you're larger, because you can afford to do it and you still want to have all the operating controls. So we're trying to figure out how to give our startup all of those advantages as early as possible. Right.
Okay. So move to the next question then on that is, can they walk us through fundamentally how customer acquisition works, and how did you have something before we move on?
Yeah, I had one thing I was going to say, to add to the SPV and leasing model is, the single largest cost of any fiber company above all else is drilling. So to cut that cost to a third is huge. The other thing is, what I've seen in the industry, nothing will turn a customer off more than not taking care of putting their yard and all that together. You have some really excited cheerleaders per se in a neighborhood that are out talking you up to their neighbors. And if you go in and you do a poor job restoring their yard, they can turn on you in a heartbeat and they become your biggest adversary. And they will complain at a ratio of 10 plus times to 1 because you screwed it up. They will never let it go. So that's the other advantage that we have is, we keep that goodwill going by controlling that quality of construction.
Right. And to add to that, I'm glad you brought that up, Al, is that, with Cody's experience of running the crews on the drills, he's able to has the experience in doing that. And so that will allow us even more advantages, because somebody looking at this if we're looking for somebody else as well, that's more management, that's more employees, more to deal with, et cetera, et cetera. Well, it's actually an advantage to us, just what you said there, because we can now control the quality of the work,
Yep.
and potentially the speed of the work as well, and be flexible in it too. So, and Cody's got the experience of running those crews and he started from the ground up. So that allows us, more flexibility going forward here. So, Cody, anything to add to that before I move on?
No, sir. Okay.
All right. So next question, can they walk us through fundamentally how customer acquisition works in a brand new city? This is a 4-point question, so it's going to be a minute. We understand they're using conservative market penetration assumptions, but what would cause even the most conservative estimates to fall short? And I'll read through them and we can maybe come back. Why would a current fiber provider in Texas not expand these markets if they were profitable? They listed 10 providers on the deck. It seems if the opportunity was there, someone would have done this already. And I think all this probably answered and all the questions will be answered in one. If it's underserved market, do the people there even want it? If it's underserved market, what will cause people to switch? Okay, so to restate some of this, the first question was, we understand they're using conservative market penetration assumptions, but what would cause even the most conservative estimates to fall short? Cody, how?
Sure. There's several scenarios that, could cause penetration to fall short. As I mentioned earlier, you do a bad job on restoration during construction, you're going to lose customers that way. You could be delayed in starting construction. Somebody else could come in and build the area before you. If you don't do a good job on your due diligence in terms of the area you're looking to build, like if you build in an area that the monthly subscription rate isn't going to support, lower income areas, things like that. If you do a bad job of providing the service, you don't provide a consistently fast and reliable service. There's many reasons that would cause the penetration rates to be shorter than forecasted. But the good news is, between us here on the call, we've got 20 plus years experience in this industry. We've seen most of them. There'll always be things that come up, but I don't know that there's much that we haven't seen yet.
All right. Cody, you want to add to that, man?
Yeah, I can add the piece that I've in North Texas, I've actually driven these places and gotten out at businesses and walked in and asked, and they want it. That's just the bottom line. I have had all manner of analogies of how bad their internet is and how slow it is and unreliable and all the different things. But I have been to Chandler, walked inside of Main Street Business. I've been to Athens, walked inside of Main Street Business. And to give you an example, just a specific example, and you can see it on the map, there's proof of this if someone actually wants to see it. There is a coffee shop, and I mean like a local Starbucks, except it's not a Starbucks, it's XYZ branded, in Athens, that had to get a dedicated internet line pulled into a coffee shop, which is asinine, because they couldn't keep their Wi-Fi on, because the standard thing that goes on in a coffee shop is people come in there and students work and do homework and all that. They're spending upwards of $2,000 a month on their internet because the local provider, Optimum, which is a cable company, could not keep the internet on long enough for people to do their job or work. So that is those are perfect examples of that question. You're going to get the participation because you're bringing, they have no, even if you ended up being bad, let's just take that. They have nothing to lose by trying you, much less if you do work out, which to Hal's point, we've both done it. We've both maintained 60+% penetration rate easily. More, and mine was more to the tune of 80% because we specialized in the rural market. And so when you go and listen to people tell you that anything, please help. Yes, come do this. When can you be here? That tells you what you need to know.
Right. Yeah. People forget that, we forget that we have this internet, and when you don't have it and you can get it suddenly, it's a game changer, it's a life changer. Right. I want to go back to one of the questions here. Why would a current provider in Texas not expand to these markets if they were profitable? Hal, I think you spoke to this a little bit. I mean, and again, Cody as well. I mean, why wouldn't AT&T, why isn't, other companies going to these areas?
Yeah, I mean, it's just like any other utility that's been built over the history of the U.S. is the utility companies, they begin to provide services in the larger, more dense urban areas, and then they expand out from there. So this industry really kind of started to get ramped up about 6 or 7 years ago, and with any emerging industry, there's a cycle that they all follow, and the larger and more national, regional, local companies are focused on building from the center of the urban areas out. No one's really touched the rural areas, which therein lies the opportunities. We're probably 4 or 5 years behind what the rest of the industry has seen in terms of opportunity. No one's touched these rural areas yet, but they will. As the territory shrinks within the urban and suburban areas, they're going to start looking outward. So if we're able to get ahead of this and go build these rural areas, there is going to be a very high probability for one of those urban and suburban builders to come and acquire us, within the next couple of years.
Right. Cody, anything to add to it? Or are you pretty good with that?
I'm good with that.
Okay.
The perfect example.
Yeah. So all right, gentlemen, it's an underserved market. Do the people there even want? I think we've addressed that. It's an underserved market. What will cause people to switch? We've already stated that. I don't think we need to review that. I mean, they have cutting edge technology that we're going to bring them, and it's the best game in town. So they definitely need it. They definitely want it. I think that's pretty straightforward. The next question was and this may be they had the wrong deck. The drill dates in the preliminary rollout plan in each county are all 1 month apart. Is that standard? What are the risks if it takes longer? We assume that they move forward with these build outs before having any commitments or subscriptions. What's the plan to market this so revenue is earned as quick as possible if that's the case? So I can restate it, but Cody, you want to try a shot at that one?
Sure. The biggest advertisement that you can have is being in their front yard. People know what that orange pipe is going in, and people are naturally nosy. They come out and ask what you're doing. And so when you're going down their street, they already basically know. And if they don't, odds are they're going to stop and say, "Why are you in my yard?" And then just that's the first stage of spreading the word. The second is that you're going to have all the vehicles wrapped with what we're doing. You're going to have signs up. You're going to have, or I say we're going to have, you're going to have, you'll do pre-marketing with billboards in town and different things, participate in all the local events in high schools and such, all the different, local measures that you can do so that you're branding from day one, not just advertising. You become the name. Because right now, let's just take Chandler, for example. Optimum is the name, and that's because that's all you can get. And it used to be Suddenlink, and it used to be all the different acquisitions that they've gone through and changed.
Yep.
And it's terrible, but if that's all you've got, that's all you have. You don't have a choice. So by going to these areas, we already know the people want them. Answered that question earlier. We've already established that. Then you go in and you're making a scene in a small town. It doesn't take long for word to spread on what you're doing. because we're not in millions of people. We're in thousands of people, 5,000, 8,000, 12,000, however many there are. And it moves, it moves quickly that what you're doing. And my example was Crystal Beach. I never advertised on a billboard or, it's not like there's a radio station down there. All I used was Facebook marketing, and I had a 90-day wait for installations for 5 years because we couldn't get to people fast enough, no matter how many people we hired.
And I was going to state that, the power of Facebook marketing, Facebook groups that are free and organic. Cody, you spoke to that when you previously started initially. There is a lot of power in those types of advertisements and types of groups online that people just don't realize.
Sure.
That all types of companies, from real estate to even aviation and others, develop customers from. And so it's a very simplistic, easy way to do it. And we've already started some on the back end on this end, seeing that we're ready to perform that advertising and the groups prior to that, and doing these videos as part of that as well. Al, did you want to add anything to this? Or you pretty good with Cody's,
No, I'm good.
Okay.
The 1 month apart is a conservative estimate. We had to build a model. The reality is it's very likely going to go faster than that.
Yeah. Okay. And that was one thing to answer. I appreciate it. So 1 month apart is that standard. And I think, again, you've answered that. It's just that we trying to be very conservative in our modeling. And that way, when we exceed expectations, we exceed them and people are even happier. But if we meet them, then we've met our obligations, right? We put a lot of work into the modeling of it. Okay. So moving on to the next question here.
Question 5. Yep.
What was that?
Well, question 5 about the $10 million investment.
Yeah. Yeah. So we assume the $10 million investment only covers the rollout of Northeast Texas. Does the rollout of other regions depend on the success of the first rollout? John, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah. So the $10 million was our original model, which was revised in the summer to a 6 and 6. So I start with the fact that I think he's looking at the first rollout model, but the answer is the same. For the $10 million, we did not expect a follow-on round of capital required because the business becomes positively cash flowing. And with the positive cash flow and a reasonable amount of trailing 12-month EBITDA, the equipment becomes financeable with bank financing. So the $10 million was not just to cover the rollout of Northeast Texas. It was to, of course, address those markets initially, but then out of positive cash flow, the rest of effectively East Texas, all the way down to the Gulf, was going to be covered out of cash flow and debt.
Right.
There was, the discussions that we've had have been, once you've proven what you can do with the first 6 million, which is what our target is now, versus the 10, the idea was very much, once you've proven that, then you make logical discussions about any additional capital to accelerate the process. If you think of this as a land grab kind of idea, where being first in that semi-rural market is important, then you just simply run the math to say, what's the equity value that's created by moving today, and what's the cost of the equity that you might literally need to raise to achieve that, to get into that space? How many crews do you have to have? Cody and Hal, you would turn to Cody and Hal and say, how many people can you find? How many drilling crews can you run simultaneously? And they would give you the operational answer or the bottleneck from an operational perspective. So really, when we were thinking of the original 10 or the 6 that we're asking for now with a 6 follow-up, those are really the ideas that it's not that amount of money, whether it's 2-staged or single-staged at 10, yes, it captures the North and Northeast Texas market, but it creates a cash flowing entity that allows itself to self-finance for all of East Texas, as we've been outlining.
Right.
His next question: what's the risk of returning to the market to raise more capital, continue rolling out? Whether you have 8,000 customers or 10,000 customers, and sort of by the end of 25, that once you have a subscribed customer base and you have a number of pass buys and subscriber rate out of that, that allows us to actually use the valuation metrics that have been used in recent acquisitions, even on a discounted basis. And so we collectively think the step up in equity value would be substantial. So when their concern is the risk of returning the cap to raise additional capital would be effectively at a low valuation. I would argue if the business has achieved remotely what we're suggesting by the end of 25, then you're actually raising money at a substantial uplifted valuation.
Right. And that could also be, at those 10,000 subscriber level or so, a lot of bank financing comes in place as well, to where,
that's really a function of EBITDA. And at the end of 25, if we print something close to the projected 2.7 million of EBITDA at the end of 25, we have basically 3 times that in equipment financing, senior debt equipment financing available for the fiber optic and the boxes that are going to go in the ground. So the need for equity is after you get past the first, whether it's 10 today or the 6 and 6 model, which we are now preferring. Once you get past that initial round, that initial amount of capital, it's a self-financing business. And the only way you would need additional equity financing if you've remotely met the projections is because you make a decision that you need to be simply pursuing 10 markets simultaneously, not 2 or 3.
Right. And on that last note there, John, I mean, Cody spoke to us a lot, and how he spoke to us well, is, what is really the difference, once we're up and going, the first, 6 months or so of running 3 drilling crews or 10 drilling crews or 20 drilling crews, besides cash flow and expenses, of course, and capital to buy the drills. And Cody, you see that as something that's overwhelming and not scalable, or is it just how do you see that, man?
I mean, I don't, but I come from an oil and gas world where we have multiple things running around the world at the same time. And so it's just project management. It's still multiple places. It's just county to county or multiple places within a county. You have the same, you just increase the quantity of crews and the project managers, and your meetings are a little longer every day. I don't mean to oversimplify that, but that's where any good management structure comes in, and you make sure that it functions. I hear you discuss it on our calls, just about what you're doing within Lyft. It's no different from you managing multiple airplanes, multiple places.
Mm-hmm.
John probably raises money for multiple customers, and he's got and he has people that report to him on where each one are. It's just a rinse and repeat effect.
You don't have operational limitations of finding bodies. That's not your concern.
It hasn't been in the past, but that's because we paid well. This one of the pluses with this is it allows for us to pay above market value for this. And I don't mean to say that we're doing it to buy employees, but I was able to pay and bring people from an hour drive away and happily come do that drive every day and stop working for who they work for because they wanted to work for us. I never had a labor problem. And my business was in somewhere that was a vacation area where there wasn't blue collar workers, because you've either made your money or you're retired, or excuse me, you've made your money or you don't need to work or you're retired or some way there. And I still did not have a problem attracting talent. So I don't mean to say that I've got a crystal ball, but I do have a method that I feel works.
And how, anything to add to that, man?
No, I agree with what Cody said.
Okay.
You hire good people, you pay them well, and treat them right, and they want to stay, and those folks refer you to others, and then you end up with a backlog of people that are wanting to come work for you.
And with both y'all's experience, there's lots of resources and context to pull from as well on that side of it. We spoke about it numerous times within our internal meetings, whether we're going to the labor market or we're going to our network and resources. We don't see that there's, from our conversation, we don't feel there's any issue whatsoever, in a labor side of things here. With that being said, I'll go to the last question here, which is a multi-faceted question here. concerning the subscriber numbers proposed, is the preliminary rollout plan that they have, call it 25,000 homes captured. All the drilling will be done by March 2025. But the income statement doesn't have 25,000 subscribers until 2029, 2030. I think that was from an older model, John.
Yeah, I think they're mixing. I think the person asking the question is mixing a couple of ideas. If you look at the 6 and 6, so 6 million Series A, 6 million Series B, delayed by about 12 to 18 months between the two raises. You drill out substantially a large number of pass-bys, but we have assumed a lower uptake rate than either Cody or Hal ever experienced in anything that they ever drilled, as a way to be conservative in the model. So we get to 25,000 customers at the end of 29. If you go to page 16 of the executive summary, just trying to direct anyone looking at it, you'll see 25,000 customers in round numbers at the end of 29, but that is a lower uptake rate in terms of the number of houses you pass by versus get connected. So we have just made a conservative assumption about it.
Right.
That the drilling would continue, not stop in 25. The drilling would continue, and you would have ongoing customer acquisition even on the pass-by neighborhoods through that entire period of time. They also ask a question about, in the first regions, the market is only 25,000 homes. Again, I think they're asking a question before they really before they had seen the FCC data that Hal brought to bear. I think they're substantially greater than 25,000 homes in those first regions. Absolutely. And it's just simply the connecting the folks, I think, is where there's some sort of a disconnect in the question. But Hal, I ask you to fill in on an answer, because I think whoever's asking this question, I need to walk through the model with them, because I think they're mixing apples and oranges.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's one area that we identified that has 21,000 by itself.
Right.
So yeah, it's well more. I don't remember exactly the number that, the first area that we've identified, but it's 65,000 is the number that comes to mind. I have to go back and look at it, but it's well north of 25,000 homes.
Yeah. And one thing I want to add to this that we haven't discussed yet is that, or we discussed on the last call either, is that, the slower process of the bottleneck in this business is not the drilling, it's the installing. And so you may drill areas, installers are falling right behind it. The more installers you do drill crews. And even though you may have drilled, call it 25,000, because that's the number we've been talking about, by 29, all those may not be installed. They may be installed in 30, it's not far behind it, but depending on the size of the area, that installation is going to be slower. You can add more installers to it, but it really, at that point, becomes cost prohibitive when we've done the model. There is a certain number of drill crews, along with a certain number of installers that really are, what I would consider best practice and best for the budget and for the profitability of the business. Something else that we didn't mention in here that we talked about earlier that I want to add to it, kind of a round up here, is that, when we go into an area and we say we take the low rate of 60% of what Hal's done in these more suburban areas, and instead of the 80% that Cody did in the rural areas, there is going to be organic growth in those areas organically without us doing anything. And in our marketing plan today, and our action we plan to do, is they're going to be continuous, low cost marketing, still being in the communities, Facebook ads, other types of ads will be occurring and happening to gain more subscriber bases in that area quicker than just organically. And Cody, how we spoke about, I know how you've had some success with that as well. So I wanted to mention that because I think it's important to see that we have been very conservative in the modeling on this, and that organic growth was extremely conservative. And it's not our model is not capturing, much of what in reality will likely occur. And Cody and Hal, do y'all agree with that, or is it something that I'm off kilter on?
No, for sure. I mean, you're going to have the people that understand what this is up front, and they're going to be begging you, please come build my neighborhood first. When can you get here? And then there's going to be the ones that understand it, but are maybe skeptical on the ability to deliver. And then there are going to be the ones that just don't understand what it is at all. And over a period of time, the people that understand it but are skeptical on the level of service or ability to deliver will realize that what we say we actually do, and they'll jump on, and then they will educate those that don't understand what this is. And when they finally get it, the uptake curve will be fast at first when we first go into a neighborhood, but then it'll be steady for the next 2 or 3 years or longer as we continue to grow market share in those areas that are built.
Right. Cody, anything to add to that? Or you go with those?
No, I mean, I'm good with that. I saw the same thing. I saw roughly 60% upon entry. And then we, again, I don't want it to sound, too optimistic, but we ended up at 95% within a year to year and a half because of what Hal just said. There are people that held out. I want to make sure it works before I turn off what I've got, because it's not fun to change, and all of the reasons. I'm in a contract with who I have now. There's lots of different reasons, but we ended up almost with the entire neighborhoods again because there wasn't a lot of options. Al had better numbers than what we've put in here, and he was going up against actual competitors. So it doesn't leave much room for error whenever you're going somewhere that you may or may not have a competitor, or you're upping the competitor so far that it's you basically are making them obsolete.
It's kind of like, that's a lot I just thought of this. It's kind of like saying, hey, do you want to ride in the bus into a wagon and buggy with horses, or do you want to drive in my new truck? I mean, when you're looking at fiber comparisons, to me, that's an analogy, because, the old cable models is like, wagon and buggy with horses, and we're basically bringing them, a truck or a race car that they can actually run with. I mean,
remember, most cable plants were built in the 80s for TV.
Yep.
And they have somehow over time, I say somehow, I know how, but over time they have band-aided and supercharged and made things to work on something that was not designed to deliver data. It was designed to deliver analog TV.
Yep.
And they have made technology around it rather than fiber, which was only ever meant to carry data. That was its sole purpose. So it just goes faster and faster. They don't have to change the medium. You don't have to upgrade the cable. You don't have to do anything. New speeds come out. You put different electronics on each end, and you get 10 times more speed.
And in the markets we've forecasted to go into, if we have competition, the competition is cable.
Correct.
And so, which y'all spoke about, that y'all both been very successful in, and we've had banks say that they love to go against cable markets because they always win. So, I mean, it's pretty straightforward. It's a what we consider as a low risk because we know the market. Y'all have done it, had the experience, et cetera. So, I think we've done a good job of providing some color to this. The last question here, and John, Cody, and Hal, is for all of us, really, it'd be helpful to understand the thoughts on potential exit plans. And I think that, we all add value and color on that. John, do you want to, Hal, Cody, let's all speak about it, and then we can wrap the call.
I would say there have been enough acquisitions by publicly traded companies of large private companies where there's enough information in the marketplace that you can come to reasonable valuation multiples for each subscriber and reasonable valuation for each pass by. Those are useful and helpful. As a startup or someone that's only up to, say, 10,000 subscribers, you just discount off those numbers, and those present very attractive value creation from where the investment is today to what those purchase prices may be on a discounted basis. I think, from a timing perspective, there was a consolidation effort about a year and a half ago, and it has sort of paused at the moment. There will be another consolidation effort when all of those businesses are sort of integrated in, And it's really a function of, think of it as rings around urban areas, right? Urban areas are what are going to get built out first and where the majors want to play because of the density. And they're going to buy their way to other sections of that rural area or other areas of other parts of that rural area urban area. What we're trying to do is get ahead. What you all are proposing to do is to get ahead into the rural markets and create a large enough ownership stake in a large enough geography that you create a number of different possible buyers when they get to that point, when that is the next logical way that they can grow, as opposed to creating any more uptake in the urban markets. So it's from a financing structure, financing M&A opportunity, it's very logical. I say that from the investment banking perspective and valuation multiples perspective. Hal, Cody, you all have built businesses, and you've also built businesses that then buyers came to you about, came to talk to you about. So I'd be interested in where you think the logical, what's the logical scale where you start to get large public company interest.
Yeah, to use the ring analogy, I was going to say it's kind of like dropping a pebble in a pond, and where you drop that pebble is the center of a major metro area, and the rings kind of go out from there. So you had, the phases of the business, the industry was, you had these startups that were private equity backed that, and those kind of grew out. Then you had the larger venture capital that were all looking for a platform to acquire. Those rings kind of grew out. And then, the next phase of this business is going to be consolidation of, the large regional or national companies. And, the good news for Excitant is that, you're right at the beginning of those rings reaching that rural area. So there will potentially be, two bites of this apple, one being the acquisition by financial institutions that are looking out over the horizon for the competitive acquisitions and the strategic acquisitions. So, there'll be 2 rounds of acquisitions for these rural markets, and that'll be the financial firms first, followed by the strategics second. The strategics are just kind of starting. They're trying to get ahead of that curve so they can maybe get some discounts on acquisitions, because we're in a little bit of a valley in terms of the peak valuations right now. There was a deal with AT&T just did a deal. It slips my mind on which one they did, but I know Verizon just acquired Frontier. Mm-hmm. So we'll probably see these national players gobbling up the large regionals, but then the regional
T-Mobile and MetroNet.
What's that?
T-Mobile and MetroNet.
So there you go. That was another good example. You're going to start seeing these regional players wise up and say, you know what, we need to go bolt on these locals to make our region larger, so that whenever the national player comes after us, they're going to pay a premium for this larger entity.
Right. And to put it in a geographic terms, I've stated, but I'm going to state it a little bit simpler. Is the regions we're going from Northeast Texas down to Southeast Texas to make our initial service area, that's going to border against, as you said, the rings of the suburban area, the Houston area, potentially even Dallas area, getting close to that as well, to make it, to push towards being very attractive to some of these larger either regional or national carriers saying, hey, we need this, right? Mm-hmm. And that would also hit the cycle of the business, whether it's 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, or 3 years. We're in that cycle to where this is going to be something that we're looking at once they've, encumbered or taken over the whole the suburban areas. And so, Cody, do you have anything else to add to that, or John, or Hal?
Yeah, I mean, I use, I use this all the time, but I use the analogy of how cell phones started in the late 80s. How many different companies did there used to be? There was Primeco, there was Cellular One, there was GTE MobileNet, there was Aerial Wireless, there was Centennial Wireless. There was so many different providers, and they were going further and further out, because when you first started, you couldn't leave the city with your cell phone or it didn't work. And then they went out and said, ooh, all these people want cell coverage too, similar to what we're doing. And then at some point, your cell phone company changed names, and you didn't change people because someone bought them. And then They got larger, and then you had people like Singular come out that gobbled up the small companies. Then when Singular got big enough, and I'm proving Hal's point here. Then whenever Singular got too big, AT&T said, "We'll take that." And then when GTE MobileNet and multiple companies got too big, Verizon all of a sudden came along. Vodafone became T-Mobile, and so on and so on. This is exactly what's happening. The difference is you don't travel with this internet.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Well, if I think we've answered all the questions here. It was obviously, we added a lot of color to the summary we were going to provide to this. And if nobody has anything else here, I just wanted John, Hal, Cody, all are good in a good place. I just wanted to thank the potential investors that are looking at investing in Excitant. This is a very exciting opportunity for us and anybody that's going to get involved in it. And it's something that is just a tremendous opportunity with a lot of future return for the investors and ourselves. And so we're looking forward to breaking ground here before the end of the year and getting started. But looking forward to further questions and input from y'all. But thank you for your time.
Thanks for watching Excitant Fiber's Q&A session. We hope this video has provided you with a clear understanding of our strategy, competitive advantages, and the potential for strong returns on your investment. If you have more questions or need further details, don't hesitate to reach out.